The 80s had some of the best animated cartoons, from He-Man to Thundercats to Transformers, and of course, G.I. Joe. While we've seen these properties receive a video game treatment over the years, G.I. Joe is a property that hasn't had a new console installment since 2009, back when the Rise of Cobra movie came out. It's been 11 years, but G.I. Joe finally has a new game for the PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch, and soon PC, called G.I. Joe Operation Blackout. Developed by Chilean studio Iguanabi and published by Game Mill Entertainment, is this a return that'll have you shouting "Yo Joe?" Or is it not worth listing in? Let's find out. G.I. Joe Operation Blackout is a third-person action shooter that'll have you playing as both the Joes and Cobra team, based on the new classified lineup of action figures. The story, which I will try to keep spoiler-free, begins with Cobra and Storm Shadow attacking the USS Flag to take over. In doing so, the G.I. Joe team disperses in various locations around the world, keeping a low profile on how to get the team together again to plot an attack to take back the USS Flag headquarters. However, there's a bigger threat than what the Joes realize that they have to stop before it's too late. Throughout the campaign's 17 story missions, you will experience both sides of the conflict, which makes things interesting to fully engross in the overall story. The story is honestly one of the game's highlights. Being conveyed in an animated comic style, the story itself is actually interesting and keeps you entertained from start to finish. It evokes the sense of watching a Saturday morning cartoon. While this could have easily been a cookie-cutter story, there's actually some plot twists that I didn't see coming, as well as a cliffhanger ending. As mentioned, the game is a third-person action shooter. You will play as one of the 6 characters from each team, with 12 characters in total. Each mission has you choose one of the 2 characters, each with their own attributes, special ability, and specified primary weapon. In a few missions, you can choose between more characters, but the large majority is choosing between one of the 2. The game plays like your standard third-person shooter. You have a shield gauge and health gauge, with shields replenishing when you're not taking damage over time, whereas health only replenishes when finding health pickups in the levels. Controls are straightforward, and gunplay felt pretty solid for the most part. There's even an active reload mechanic akin to Gears of War. For those who are not familiar, when reloading the gun, you will see a meter appear, and if you press the reload button at the right time, you're awarded a faster reload. If you press the button at the wrong time, or not at all, you'll have to wait until the meter finishes moving and for your character to finish their reload animation. You have 2 weapons equipped at all times, the primary uniquely assigned to each character, and the secondary you can swap out with any weapons you find on the battlefield. You also have grenades you can utilize when the going gets tough. Also, each character has a special ability that can be initiated once the meter at the bottom center of the screen fills up over time. These range from special ammo being equipped to dish out more damage, a grenade that explodes multiple times in the location it lands, or decimating enemies within your radius while a certain character animation plays out. These are okay, but I felt like the grenade one never really did much impact as I would have expected. Each character also has a unique dodge mechanic. For example, Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow can do 3 consecutive dodges in quick succession, while Baroness and Scarlet can dodge and automatically reload their weapons in the process. I actually like this idea quite a bit. To break things up though, you get a few vehicle missions where you drive the Hiss Tank and Persuader. While they play identically and only have cosmetic differences, it's a nice way to break up the campaign. The tanks drive forward automatically, and you will focus on steering the tanks while aiming the turrets to gun down all who stand in your way. There are even some boss battles at the end of these missions. While I enjoyed these segments, it does have some issues. The aiming felt a little bit too loose for starters, but it does have at least an assisted aim mechanic to lock the crosshair on enemies once you're aiming close to their position. Also, when enemies come from behind the screen and collide with your tank has a way of doing a 90-degree turn into a wall. It feels really odd that a tank like this should be that weightless. Throughout the levels, there are side objectives that you can complete, as well as collectibles to find. The collectibles are comic covers from various G.I. Joe comics over the years that you can view in the Knowing is Half the Battle gallery in the main menu. There are also character skins and weapon skins to unlock that you can find scattered in levels. Should you find all the collectibles in the game, you will unlock videos to view as well. Also, there's a bit of replay value here too. You can replay any mission with 4 difficulty options, as well as enable modifiers. These modifiers affect the overall score you will get as the end result of a level, but these range from infinite ammo, you only have 1% health, no shields at all, melee attacks only, etc. Additionally, replaying any levels beaten will let you choose any of the 6 characters on the faction catered for that mission. So if you want to replay all the Joe missions playing as Snake Eyes only, you can do that in your second playthrough. Now, G.I. Joe Operation Blackout is clearly a game made for G.I. Joe fans by G.I. Joe fans. There's nothing this game does that'll wow you by any means, so if you're not into G.I. Joe, you're probably not going to get much out of this game. That being said though, I myself am a moderate G.I. Joe fan. I know a good amount, mostly because my older brothers introduced me to it, and I have a knowledge of the material due to that. And I actually thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. However, the game does have some issues overall to point out. First off, I do wish melee attacks had a slight lock-on if it were within an enemy's radius. I'm not saying to teleport to them, but I found myself constantly hitting the melee button near them, and it never really felt that satisfying to try and hit them. This was in part due to never being able to land a hit successfully on the first swipe. Second, the game has full campaign co-op and 4-player competitive multiplayer, and while I can understand co-op being local, the competitive multiplayer not having any online connectivity feels like a lost opportunity. Also, the companion AI for missions is very hit or miss. Sometimes they'll help take out the foes alongside you, but more often than not they just follow you around and don't deal with attacking enemies, all while you're being blasted at. Boss AI also isn't that great, in which they usually just resort and run after you and shoot at all costs, and you try to get some distance from them occasionally. Also, you do tend to repeat locations on several missions, specifically the Arctic missions, with only slight tweaks in the level's path that can feel a bit redundant. Visuals are pretty good for the most part, they aren't anything to write home about, and at times does feel more like a game from last generation than this generation, and maybe that's not the worst thing to be completely honest. I did actually like the art style, it once again evoked a Saturday morning cartoon vibe, and it avoided the whole hyper-realistic look that I don't think every game needs. Animations are okay, but there is a slight glitch that happened quite often when landing a jump that characters would kind of run at a tilted angle. It was a little odd. Also, I wish that when characters spoke on screen, their mouths would actually move instead of being shut tight. Also, when enemies come out of launch pods, they tend to come out before the pod opening animation kicks in, which is also really odd. The character models look pretty decent though. The game does run at 30 frames per second, and on the Switch there were a few moments of some slowdown depending on how many enemies bombarded you on screen. If playing handheld on the Switch though, the resolution does take a hit, and it's definitely below 720p. In terms of audio, the voice acting is a mixed bag, but it does feel like, once again, a Saturday morning cartoon, so it actually works in its favor, and that's the biggest thing here. It's a game that clearly has a labor of love for the 80s Real American Hero cartoon series. Even some of the sound effects in the game come from the cartoon, which is a nice touch and homage to fans. Sound effects for the guns are fairly solid, with only 1 or 2 guns that have a sound effect that doesn't quite pack a punch. My favorite weapon to fire in the game was definitely the pistol, due to how powerful it sounded. Music fits the action really well also, using a dynamic score that plays music the entire level, but it ramps up even more when the action gets going. Honestly, a lot of the songs kind of stuck with me even after beating it. Heck, even the first level when you're on the USS Flag is a great song that fits perfectly with what's happening on screen. G.I. Joe Operation Blackout is not a game that's going to win over any new Joe fans, but I don't believe that was the intent. The developers clearly know they're catering this game to fans of the property, and there's nothing wrong with that. While it wasn't by any means a great game overall, it's an enjoyable one that I feel Joe fans will enjoy. Sometimes we don't need these massive cinematic gameplay experiences to have a fun time, but instead, just some mindless action that fits the bill. It may feel more like an experience from yesteryear, but in the end, there's no denying that I enjoyed my time with the game, so much so that I played it twice before getting this review up and running. After beating it, I do feel that if Iguanabee was given the green light to make a sequel, with a bigger budget and more development time, I really think they could provide a very worthy follow-up. Bottom line, if you're a Joe fan, you'll mostly enjoy what's here. If you're not, then chances are you may not fully appreciate what they offer. And now that you know, remember, knowing is half the battle.